Part 1: The Torn Flag on Homeland Soil. Hook opening line. We're seizing the property, Mr. Beckett. The VA confirms you're no longer eligible. That sentence didn't just hit like a hammer. It tore through 72-year-old Graham Beckett's chest like shrapnel all over again. If you served, if you bled for this country, tell us in the comments. What would you do if the very system you defended turned around and said you don't belong here anymore? Would you stay silent? Would you walk away? Or would you remember what they taught you in war? The man who said it was barely 30, clean suit, government badge, voice soaked in bureaucracy devoid of humanity. He didn't even look Graham in the eye. Beside him, 3 black SUVs idled on the gravel, their exhaust fuming into the Montana morning. Behind them, a man in a tailored grey coat stepped forward, polished boots, crunching on the frost. Luis del Rio. Technically, he was a foreign investor from Rio Norte Group, a front for the cartel. In reality, he was the man buying silence acre by acre. Del Rio removed his leather gloves slowly, theatrically. I've always admired American soldiers, he smiled. But this is a new era, Mr. Beckett. Your time is over. Then, like it meant nothing, he spat on Graham's soil. You used to command, he added, looking down on the old man. Now you take orders. And with that they turned their backs. One agent handed over the eviction document marked with an official VA seal. It stated clearly Beckett's disability claim was retroactively denied due to insufficient service documentation. The same documentation he submitted twice. The same claim that had sat in pending for 5 years, now gone, like he never existed. The trucks rolled out their tires, crushing the dirt, where Graham had once built a home with his own hands. The old wooden fence, the American flag faded by sun, and storms hung limp in the wind. He didn't speak, didn't yell, just stood still like a stone monument. But behind his steel-gray eyes, something began to stir. Not rage, but memory. The last time Graham Beckett felt that cold was Kandahar 2004. His team was outnumbered 6-1. They didn't wait for orders, they created orders. That day his men survived because they trusted him to see what others couldn't. That same silence filled him now. Inside the house, a small, battered wooden cabin lined with medals, photos, and files, Graham walked with slow purpose. He passed the fireplace, stepped onto a loose floorboard, and lifted it to reveal a lockbox. Dusty, metal, heavy. The combination lock clicked once, then again and again, inside a folded map of the Bitterroot Mountains marked with old codes. A photo of his unit, Tier 1 3rd Battalion call sign, Phantom Unit. A silver Zippo lighter engraved with the phrase, "Where others fall, we finish." And a secured satellite phone. He sat at his old oak desk, unrolled the map, and reached for a notebook labeled Widow's Reckoning. His hands calloused but steady, typed a single message into the encrypted phone. OP Widow's Reckoning, Tier 1. Burn protocol, 3 recipients, 3 different parts of the country, 1 in Nevada, 1 in Pennsylvania, 1 somewhere off-grid. Each of them had once been a part of something nobody talked about. Not on the news, not even in Pentagon hallways. He hit send. Seconds later, 3 words returned, 1 from each, all identical, affirm, then silence. Graham leaned back and closed his eyes. Outside, the wind picked up. The sound of it brushing through the pine trees reminded him of helicopter rotors. He could smell diesel, hear comms in his ear, feel the weight of the past like a rucksack of old ghosts. He wasn't angry. He was ready. He took off his denim overshirt, revealing the old black tactical shirt underneath the same type they wore in operations deep in Syria. Over it, he slipped on the faded M65 jacket, its sleeves still patched with the unofficial Phantom Unit insignia. He moved slowly but deliberately like a soldier inspecting gear before deployment. Not for war, for clarity. Across the room, the flag that once stood straight on a wooden pole had fallen. Its stars and stripes sagged torn at the edge. Graham walked over, picked it up, and held it to his chest. He didn't salute it. He whispered to it, "They forgot us, but we never forgot who we are." A hawk screeched in the distance. Somewhere, 3 men, 3 ghosts were already moving. He didn't need to say more. They would come. Because once long ago they vowed never to let anyone erase each other. As the sun dipped below the ridge and the shadows stretched across the land, Graham Beckett stood alone, a forgotten commander, now resurrected not by medals, not by rank, but by betrayal. And before the stars blinked open in the cold Montana sky, he whispered 4 words into the silence. "This war is mine." Cliffhanger. That same night, in a small gas station outside Nevada, a man with a single eye and calloused fists received the message. He looked up, lit a cigarette, and walked into the dark. In Philadelphia, another checked the phone, kissed a picture of his dead squad mate, and began packing gear. And deep in the Pacific Northwest, a woman silently erased her name from a local government list. They were ghosts, and they were coming home. Part 2. The Ghosts Come Home. Hook opening line. 3 black trucks crossed the county line that night, but none of them made it to the main road. The first truck exploded without warning. The second was swallowed by a wall of smoke and a nest of caltrops hidden beneath loose gravel. The third stopped cold when the driver saw a pair of boots standing in the middle of the road. Boots that hadn't moved or flinched in 5 minutes. The figure lit a cigarette with a silver Zippo and nodded slowly. He didn't have to say anything. His presence was a message written in scars and silence. You're watching a story that many said would never happen. But for those who served, for those who were left behind and erased, this is more than a story. It's a reckoning. If you believe forgotten veterans deserve to be heard, don't scroll, hit subscribe. What happens next changes everything. Derek Torch Callahan never liked phones. After Fallujah, he lost an eye and half the trust he once had in the system. He worked at a gas station on the edge of Elko, Nevada, where no one asked questions. When the alert lit up his encrypted device, Torch didn't hesitate. He turned off the pumps, flipped the closed sign, walked into the supply room, and opened a locked freezer that didn't hold meat. It held a black duffel marked Tier 1 active. Inside was a rifle he built himself, night goggles he never returned, and a photo of Graham Beckett holding a young Afghan boy after a firefight. Torch stared at the photo, nodded once, and zipped the bag. No clothes, just ammo gear and a black bandana with a tear down the center. At the same hour, in a halfway house outside Philadelphia, Luis Ortega was dreaming of sand and steel. PTSD had robbed him of sleep for years, but tonight was different. When the alert buzzed his encrypted unit, he opened it with trembling fingers. As he read the words, OP Widow's Reckoning, his hands stopped shaking. His roommate, a young vet from Syria, asked where he was going. Ortega smiled gently. To pay back a man who once took a bullet so I could live. That's where I'm going. Deep in the Olympic forest, Sarah Miles sat alone in a wood cabin listening to static from a shortwave radio. She was the only female intelligence commander from Phantom Unit. After being pushed out of the VA system for being emotionally unstable, she disappeared off-grid. But her mind never stopped calculating. She didn't cry when she received the alert. She didn't blink. She stood, opened the trapdoor under her stove, and retrieved a waterproof case. Inside, field notes, encrypted drives, and a voice recorder labeled for Beckett. She pressed record. If they're targeting you, Commander, they're not just coming for your land, they're coming for what we built. I'm en route. As each of them moved through states, forests, and rivers, they left no digital footprints. They communicated in symbols, in dead drops, in flashes of light and silence. Graham Beckett studied the terrain of his ranch from a rock outcrop behind his home. He wasn't waiting. He was redesigning the battlefield. He set blind zones, optical dead spots, and placed decoy gear where scouts might look. What used to be a cattle ranch was becoming a chessboard with no safe squares. But what no one knew was that the cartel wasn't working alone. In a conference room at the Montana State Capitol VA, Administrator Carlton Reeves reviewed files. His assistant entered. "The Beckett claim?" she asked. Reeves smirked. "Officially terminated. Retroactively denied. We buried it in a subcommittee no one reads. Is it legal?" He closed the file. "It's quiet." That night Reeves received a call. No number, no voice, just a whisper. "You forgot who trained the men who end wars." Back in Montana, Graham stood at the ravine where he buried a service dog. A small red laser blinked twice on a tree 100 yards out. He smiled. "They're here." Minutes later, inside the ranch, 4 shadows reunited under moonlight. No handshakes, no salutes, just nods. Torch spoke first. "3 suits and 2 cartel scouts are patrolling Route 90. Ortega added, they've mapped your property, but not your dead zones." Sarah laid out USB drives. "If Reeves is involved, I'll find the line." Graham looked at them. These weren't soldiers anymore. They were lions backed into corners, and now they were awake. "Last time we met," he said, "we were told to stand down. This time we decide when it ends." Outside the wind howled. Inside war drums began to beat again. Anger from a hill. Far away. Sarah activated her signal jammer, and the cartel's radios all at once went dead. Part 3, the Homeland Campaign. Hook opening line. "They thought we forgot how to fight. We just stopped needing medals." The radios went dead. That was the first sign. Then came the silence. The kind of silence that doesn't belong in the woods. No birds, no wind, just the deep, suffocating stillness of something ancient waking up. From the ridge above the Beckett Ranch, 4 shadows moved through the pine like ghosts' eyes scanning hearts steady. The Phantom Unit was not only back, it was awake. And for the first time in decades, they had a mission that wasn't written in any briefing room or signed by any politician. This one came from somewhere deeper, somewhere more sacred, from betrayal. You're watching a reckoning unfold in real time. What would you do if your country stripped your name, your rights, your land, and your honor and handed it to criminals in suits and ties? Would you break, or would you return to the man you once were and remind them what loyalty looks like? If you're still watching, hit subscribe. Share this with someone who still wears the scars of forgotten wars, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought justice meant. Inside the house, Sarah stood over a laptop connected to a surveillance drone disguised as a weather balloon. She was silent, eyes twitching as her software decrypted scrambled frequencies. Ortega was in the barn camouflaging a portable EMP device inside an old feed cart. Torch lined the western tree line with pressure sensors and directional microphones. And Graham Beckett, the man they called Commander, was sharpening the edge of a plan he had buried with his medals. "We're not just defending dirt," he said as his hand brushed across the soil. "We're defending the silence they want erased." Our silence. The cartel wasn't stupid, but they were arrogant. That was their flaw. They had no idea that Beckett's property was mapped with tactical precision. Every tree, every drop in elevation, every blind corner. Beckett had turned his own land into a layered kill box. But they weren't here to kill. They were here to expose. 3 nights before the cartel was set to return with the state development delegation, Torch intercepted a transmission. It wasn't in Spanish, it was in English. Military cadence, US-based encryption. Someone high up was coordinating with Del Rio, the cartel investor. That someone was Carlton Reeves. It wasn't just land theft. It wasn't just a denied claim. Reeves had used his position at the VA to identify and erase files of Tier 1 operators marked unstable. It was an internal purge sold to lawmakers as benefit optimization. In reality, it was revenge. Reeves had a history. He was once denied Tier 1 selection by Beckett himself, and now, 20 years later, he had found a way to get even, not by bullets, by erasure. When Graham learned the truth, he didn't speak. He didn't curse. He just sat on the porch with the flag folded beside him and stared into the night. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then Sarah, voice trembling but firm, said, "You didn't just command us, Graham. You saved us. One by one. If they want to erase you, they'll have to erase all of us." That night, they launched the operation. Not with gunfire, but with strategy. Sarah breached Reeves' encrypted laptop through a ghost server in Alaska. Inside it were audio recordings of meetings between Reeves and Del Rio, including instructions on how to sanitize any resistance from veteran landowners. Ortega located a hidden server farm in Missoula that housed the VA's offline records. With the borrowed power grid spike and the EMP cart torch modified, they fried the entire digital trail that Reeves had tried to create. No more fake denials, no more purged claims. But the real blow came from within the community. Graham called a town hall meeting at the local church. No police, no media, just people, farmers, teachers, widows, veterans. He stood at the altar, not in uniform, but in that worn black shirt with the faded Phantom unit patch. And for the first time in years, he spoke not like a soldier, but like a man trying to remember what truth sounded like. "They told you I was unstable, that I was dangerous, but I buried friends on 5 continents for a flag that now tells me I don't belong. They took my name from the record, but they couldn't take the faces I remember. The men and women who died believing this country still had honor." He played the recording of Reeves' voice. He showed them the documents. And then he stepped down. A young boy no older than 10 stood and asked, "Did you ever save someone's life?" Graham looked at him and said, "Not enough of them." By the next morning, the FBI received an anonymous data dump with files from Reeves' hard drive. Within hours, a federal investigation began. But the cartel didn't wait. On the eve of the inspection, 5 SUVs rolled up the dirt path to Graham's land. Inside was Del Rio. Alongside him, 3 ex-military contractors armed to the teeth. They came not to talk, but to silence. What they didn't know was that every path into the ranch had been rerouted. Every gate led into a funnel. Every open field had directional mics transmitting live audio to the sheriff's office. As the convoy advanced, Ortega released a remote flare pattern that mimicked a forest fire evacuation. Torch triggered his sensor array. The ground lit up with warning beacons. Spotlights activated on remote poles. It was no longer a ranch, it was a maze. The men inside the SUVs panicked. Radios dead, GPS jammed, drones above them, movement in the trees, voices in the wind. Then Graham stepped out of the woods. He wasn't armed, he wasn't scared, he was just there. And that was enough. Del Rio stepped forward, trying to smile. "Let's not make this dramatic." Graham looked at him and said, "You already did, when you spit on my land." A single click echoed in the air. Sarah had activated a feed to a live stream. The whole town was watching. Del Rio froze. And then he turned. The contractors backed off, and the convoy left. They never came back. Cliffhanger. 2 days later, Carlton Reeves was subpoenaed by a federal grand jury. But he wasn't home. He was missing. And on his desk left behind was a printed photo, the Phantom unit, standing shoulder to shoulder. One word written in red ink, "Remember." Part 4. You can't erase a man who sacrificed. Hook opening line. Opening line. "This land isn't yours anymore, Mr. Beckett. Your file says retired, disabled, mentally unstable." The words echoed inside the town courthouse like a slap across the face of every veteran who had ever been forgotten. Graham Beckett stood silent in the center of the chamber, surrounded by whispering suits and gloved security. The senator's aide, a young man in a pinstripe jacket, held the redacted file like it was a death certificate. The senator herself, Eleanor Voss, adjusted her pearl necklace and leaned into the microphone with a cold smile that stretched too far. "You forfeited your right to this land when you lost control of your mind, Commander," she said, turning the title into mockery. "The Veterans Administration has concluded your condition is incompatible with long-term property rights and civic participation. It's not personal, it's paperwork." There was a pause in the room, one long enough for the pain to swell behind Graham's ribs like a heartbeat. He didn't move. He didn't speak. His hands stayed by his sides, fingers curling just slightly as if to remind him they still worked, that he was still real. Across the aisle, Ortega clenched his jaw until it ached. Torch was already calculating ballistic exits in his head. Sarah sat still, eyes unblinking, recording every word and every smirk with a gaze that had once broken enemy interrogators. You're watching the moment a country tried to bury a man while he was still alive. If you feel your blood rising, if this reminds you of something you or your father or your brother went through, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment. Because what happens next is not in any training manual. It's written in heart and it's paid for in scars. Outside, the town gathered quietly. No one had told them about the hearing. They found out by whispers, by worry, by the way the local sheriff's car had been idling outside Graham's property since dawn. Veterans from 3 counties had driven in. A school bus pulled up with flags taped to its windows. And then the boy arrived, 10 years old, denim jacket, holding something in a paper bag. Inside, the senator's voice sharpened. "You were given every chance, Mr. Beckett, but your mind is broken, your record is sealed, your rights are rescinded, and your land is reassigned." Then she nodded. 2 men in state-issued blazers approached Graham. One placed a hand on his shoulder. The moment his fingers made contact, Graham looked up and spoke. "Do you know what I see when I look at all of you?" The room froze. The aide blinked. The senator frowned. The guards hesitated. "I see people who think silence is weakness. I see people who confuse honor with compliance. And I see a system that forgot the only reason it still exists is because people like me never stopped fighting." His voice wasn't loud, but it was steady, and it cut through the smugness like a knife through silk. "I didn't ask for medals. I didn't ask for land. I asked for the truth, and since you refuse to carry it, I'll carry it for all of us." Then he turned and walked out. No struggle, no violence, just dignity, just defiance. Outside, the boy approached him. "My granddad said you were the one who saved him in Fallujah," he said, eyes wide. "He said you were already bleeding, but you carried him 3 miles anyway." Graham looked down. "What's your name, Caleb? And what's in the bag?" The boy opened it. A loaf of bread. "Grandma said if they're going to take everything from you, at least you shouldn't be hungry." Graham took the bread in both hands, his eyes flickering just once. "Tell your grandma thank you," he said. "And tell your granddad I remember him." Across the street, the crowd began to gather around him. No chants, no signs, just presence, wordless, powerful. Sarah walked beside him. "We have the files, Graham. The footage, the whistleblower email, Reeves's whole history. It's time to release it." He nodded. "Do it." That night, Sarah posted a 17-minute video across every platform under an anonymous veteran account. It contained the full audio of Carlton Reeves confessing his role in the purging of mental health records for Tier 1 veterans' emails, coordinating with Senator Voss's office, and a voice analysis proving that VA documents were forged by contractors connected to Rio Norte Group. The video went viral in under 6 hours. Morning news couldn't ignore it. Military forums exploded. VA officials resigned, and Senator Voss went silent. But the war wasn't over. At 3:30 in the morning, the ranch perimeter alarms lit up. 6 men in black climbed over the northern fence with night vision and suppressed rifles. Inside the house, Graham was already awake. He didn't grab a weapon, he grabbed the flag. He opened the front door, walked onto the porch, and stood there under the floodlights. The men froze, not because of fear, because of confusion. The image didn't make sense. An old man in a black shirt holding a torn flag to his chest like a shield. Behind him, silhouettes moved through the windows. Sarah, Ortega, Torch, each in position, each silent, each ready. Then came the voice from the dark. "Stand down, Commander. We're not here for a fight." Graham stepped forward. "Then you shouldn't have brought one." The lead intruder hesitated. He wasn't cartel, he was private sector, and now he was outmaneuvered. From the tree line, flashbangs dropped. Light and sound erupted. By the time it cleared, the 6 men were face down, zip-tied and disarmed. The sheriff arrived minutes later. He didn't ask questions. He only asked, "Who gave the order?" Graham handed him a folder. Inside, all the proof of Reeves's orders and Voss's cooperation. The sheriff looked at it, then looked at Graham, and nodded. "I'll take it from here." As the sun rose, the flag was raised again. Not by Graham, by the boy, Caleb. He tied it carefully, saluted, and whispered something only the wind heard. "You're not gone. You were just waiting." Cliffhanger. Inside the house, a message blinked on Sarah's laptop. "New transfer detected. Carlton Reeves spotted crossing border into Baja, Mexico. Accompanied by Luis Del Rio, armed security, unknown intent." She looked up at Graham. "We found them." Graham said nothing. He just lit his Zippo and whispered time to bring him home. Part 5. The Last Man Standing. Hook. Opening line. They came with night vision. What they didn't have was history. It started with the sound of tires on gravel. Then came the high-pitched buzz of drones circling like vultures above the valley. Somewhere on the far ridge, a satellite uplink began transmitting encrypted footage to a private terminal in Mexico. But what they didn't see was the man standing on his porch holding a folded American flag to his chest with one hand and a battered lighter in the other. Graham Beckett had been waiting for this moment longer than he had ever waited for medals, for apologies, or for justice. This wasn't revenge. This was memory made visible. If you've ever been told you're too old to matter if your name was once written on a uniform and now it barely exists on paper, then stay right here. Because what happens next isn't about war, it's about honor. And those who think they can buy their way into silence are about to learn what it means to face a man who remembers. The team moved silently through the dark. Sarah on comms perched in a communications nest, camouflaged as a wildlife blind. Torch covered the perimeter with custom flares disguised as fence posts. Ortega waited near the gate, his breathing slow, his eyes locked on a silent pickup truck that hadn't moved for hours. Inside the truck there were no enemies, only symbols. A planted decoy meant to draw fire. They had planned every detail. But what no one could plan for was the one thing that changed everything. Caleb. The boy had slipped away from his house in the early morning, heart pounding, with the belief that maybe, just maybe, the man who saved his grandfather could still save all of them. He carried nothing but a flashlight and a letter he wrote himself, sealed in an envelope marked with red crayon. For the soldier. Graham spotted him just as the convoy entered the lower field. 4 SUVs, matte black military grade. One of them carried Carlton Reeves, the other carried Luis Del Rio. And they were not alone. Inside were 2 former defense contractors, armed with suppressed carbines and enough surveillance tech to knock out a small town. The second Graham saw the boy, he stepped off the porch and into the open. His voice cut through the cold morning air like a bell. Caleb, go home. The boy froze. Reeves stepped out of the vehicle, clean-shaven, dressed in desert khakis and a bulletproof vest. He raised his hand slowly, mockingly. I'm not here to hurt anyone, just to clean up the mess. Graham didn't move. Reeves continued. You think this land matters? You think these people matter? You were a line on a budget sheet, Beckett. A glitch in the algorithm. I didn't erase you because I hated you. I erased you because you were in the way. Graham stepped forward. You think I stood in the desert for this? You think I buried men with my own hands so you could call us numbers? Reeves glanced at Del Rio. Del Rio gave a nod. The contractors raised their rifles, but they didn't fire. Because from the trees behind them, a flare burst into the sky, lighting the field in blood-red glow. From the barn came a loudspeaker. Ortega's voice. Step away from the boy. This is a broadcasted perimeter. We're live. Sarah had hacked into a live stream on 3 veteran support networks. Thousands of viewers were watching in real time. Veterans. Gold Star families. Children of men who never came home. Torch appeared behind the far SUV, calmly aiming a custom tranquilizer rifle. Del Rio's men tried to reposition, but their signals were jammed. Reeves looked around. Suddenly, the desert-dry confidence cracked. His face twitched. His lip curled. You won't shoot, he snarled. No, Graham said. But your sins are already seen. Reeves lunged forward, but before he could reach the boy, Caleb held up the envelope. Reeves stopped. What is that? Caleb said softly. A letter. For who? For the man who didn't run. He handed it to Graham. Graham opened it. Inside, a single line. My granddad says you never leave your team behind. Please don't leave us. Graham folded the letter and placed it in his coat. Then he turned to Reeves and spoke loud enough for every watching soul to hear. You spent your life trying to bury the ones who kept this country free. But the ground won't take men like us, because we never laid down for evil. Reeves tried to run. Torch fired. A single dart dropped him where he stood. FBI agents arrived less than an hour later. Del Rio was taken without incident. All files recovered, all claims restored. But not every wound could be undone. As the dust settled, Graham sat alone on the same porch he had defended with more than just tactics. He defended it with memory, with sacrifice, with silence. The sheriff approached. They're naming the program after you. Tier 1 Recovery Initiative. It'll help every vet you saved. Graham didn't look up. He just said, make sure they don't forget Caleb. At the next sunrise, the community gathered. They planted a new flagpole, not steel, wood, from the same tree Graham's father once carved a swing from. Caleb pulled the rope. The flag rose slowly. No anthem, just breath. And when it reached the top, Graham stood, not as a soldier, not as a victim, but as a man who never left his post. Final message to viewers. If you watch this far, ask yourself, what kind of country forgets the names of those who bled for its freedom? And more importantly, what kind of people remember? This wasn't just a story, it was a reminder that silence is not weakness, that scars are medals, and that no one, no matter how forgotten, is ever truly alone. Subscribe if you believe that, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the last man standing is the one who stood for all of us.